Welcome aboard the Travel DJ Blend podcast. Rest assured, your captain and host Brian B. has logged extensive destination event miles as a headlining private event DJ. So expect to reach new heights each and every episode. Your captain will cover everything from DJ tips and tricks, travel hacks, and entrepreneurial advice. Keep your seat in the upright position while we bring you interviews with industry pros, pop culture commentary, and of course, music recs. The perfect blend. The fasten seatbelt sign is on, as we will likely experience turbulence from knowledge nuggets and truth bombs being dropped regularly. You're going to need your tray table, as taking notes is optimal. Smoking is prohibited on this flight, but your mindset shift will be fire. Your crew will be elevating the conversation and challenging the status quo. We know you have a choice when you fly this high, and we thank you for choosing the Travel DJ Blend podcast. Here's your captain, Brian B. Enjoy your flight.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Travel DJ Blend. I am Brian B., your host. Thanks for listening. If this is your first time checking us out, just want to say thank you for doing so. We have a couple different areas of focus on this podcast that will cover 301 business strategies, one-of-a-kind music finds, and travel hacks. Today's episode could fall in two of those buckets, 301 business strategies and travel hacks, as I'm entitling this episode PSA, an open letter or podcast to destination DJ gear providers. I probably should also say this is an open letter to travel DJs as well. I guess the first question you might be asking is, why listen to you? Yeah, cool. You got a podcast called the Travel DJ Blend. It's great that you have it in the title and all, but how does that make you the authority or so-called expert on travel DJing? And just to give you a quick cliff notes in case you are hearing of me for the very first time, I had run a successful multi-op, and still do actually, in Southern California, then moved to the panhandle of Florida, kept my California office open, still doing gigs there, flying back every so often. The bulk of my gigs were in the Florida operations. After about 4 years of getting our company to the top in the market, I was looking for new challenges. And so I moved to New York City in 2011 and found the road to getting the type of events that I was wanting and at the very minimum already doing in Florida to be very challenging. New York is a tough nut to crack, especially in the event space. It's very close knit. People use the same folks over and over because it's high pressure. So to break into that inner circle is extremely tough. I was a little naive, I guess that might be an understatement, and moving to New York thinking that it would just hit automatically as easy as it did in California and Florida. And although we had saved a decent amount of money for this move, we were burning through cash. Just two quick examples. The rent for a studio apartment, which was under 500 square feet, was costing us almost $2,500 a month. Our medical insurance, which in Florida we were paying about $600 a month for, all of a sudden when you switch it to a New York City zip code, it crept up to just over $2,000. So in hard costs, my bills just for two items, this doesn't include groceries or anything else, was $4,500. And you can compare that to Florida, and we were paying about a third of that. Newly married, the wife at the time was working in my business full time, so we needed to make cash. Maybe it was pride. I didn't want to go back to Florida and work the events I was doing there. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to bring in some revenue until this New York market gives me an opportunity. And I thought, you know what? Let me try to push forward in this destination DJing game full time. Again, this is 2011. Destination events are starting to become the rage. And so I would reach out to the best clients I had when I was living in the Florida area and some of my California clients, where those markets, not only local, but the majority of the work I was doing were destination events in those locations. And so I said, hey, if you know of anybody getting married in your town, I'm mobile now and traveling to do these events, would love to be considered. Now, previous to this, the one-offs, it didn't really matter if I made a whole lot of money. I just combined my passion for traveling with music, and I loved the fact that I could actually claim that I was being hired out of town. So I didn't look at the dollars and cents all that carefully. I had my local Florida gigs when I was doing these one-offs where I could make the bulk of my money and cover any losses. And there were some events where I definitely lost some money on it, but it was just being able to say I was being flown out to California or wherever the case may be. But now I had to watch the dollars and cents. I didn't have local gigs to fall back on. Everything was riding on this working out. And I'm proud to say 13 years later, I only do destination events. I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I don't have any local events here. I'm not pursuing any local events here. Everything is 100% destination driven. So I say all of that to give you the confidence in the things that I'm about to talk to you about now. The game has changed. I'm not the only traveling DJ in town anymore. I have seen an explosion of destination traveling DJs. They may not be doing it full time like I am, but they are definitely out there, and I'm all for it. It's great to see that our profession is getting the respect it deserves and that clients are looking at DJs in other markets as viable options if it resonates for them. It's never been easier to have your work shown through all of the various social media platforms, mixes heard online. I don't want to take credit for this, but as one of the guys who kind of helps put together the DJ Collective, I feel like that platform started a lot of collaboration between DJs who are recommending other DJs when they're booked, those at a very high level that can represent the brand well. And that has trickled down to many people in our community not feeling threatened anymore and actually pushing DJs from other markets and flying them in. I also think that the DJ Collective has been instrumental in planners being exposed to great DJ talent. And there's no doubt that a lot of careers have been made through the DJ Collective via relationships that never would have materialized without it. So cool. The pool of DJs that are traveling, doing destination events is large. Great. That leads me to the conversation about gear providers, because when you go out and do these destination events, you need equipment to make it happen. And so rather than sourcing from a production house, it makes a lot of sense to go through a DJ company, because the thought would be that DJ companies would be a little cheaper, more than likely, and they would have all the things that maybe a production house wouldn't carry, like DJ furniture, which has become kind of hot lately, some of the Asteras, maybe even Cold Sparks that are too niche for a production house to maybe carry. So I wanted to give some tips, and I'm going to start first with the DJs that are out there that are traveling. My suggestion to you to make it easy for the gear provider would be to come up with a professional rider of the gear that you prefer. If you want to go next level with it, include how you want things placed, and even possibly giving them options. If gear number 1 isn't available, here's gear option number 2 and 3 that I'm willing to use. That just helps cut down the back and forth. So as an example, if you are an Electro Voice speaker user and they don't have that, well then, hey, I'm cool with RCF or I'm cool with QSC. And the same would go for lighting and DJ controllers or DJ gear in general. And then I mentioned it a second ago, but the layout's important too, because if they are setting up for you, having an idea, as an example, if you're going to ask for a monitor or fill speakers, let them know where those things need to go, how you want the DJ gear set up. If you're having them do that for you, that just cuts down a lot of the back and forth on the day of when there's questions, if you have that in the rider. Get as detailed as you can with this. The last thing you want to do is slap something together, because not only are you wasting your own time and their time on the back and forth, but it also paints you as not a professional. Like you haven't done this before. One last thing I'll throw out there to you, as you get closer to the date, this wouldn't go with the rider per se unless you have this information, but once you get the floor plan from the planner or the couple or the venue, whoever you are working with, mark on there where exactly you want some of the speakers. I'd use a lot of fill speakers that are wireless, so there might be places in the room where I need those to go. Again, cuts back on back and forth when you send this ahead to the gear provider if they're doing the setup and tear down. All right, now the next one is for our gear provider friends. When you provide a quote for a DJ, I'm going to encourage you to use actual photos within that quote of the gear that you are actually going to bring to the event. I have been burned more times than I care to mention here on this podcast from gear providers, and this happens more on the international side than it does the domestic side, where they will say that they're going to provide a certain piece of gear and either it is beat to hell or it's just not the right model number or whatever the case may be. And then I've had it happen too where the type of events that are typically going to be travel events are generally higher priced. So the expectation from the client is that the gear is in pristine condition. I would request pictures of the gear that is actually going to be used. And I do that with every gear provider I work with, unless I've worked with them in the past or I've seen their gear or I know them personally. I just would encourage you to do this for both of your sakes. That way there's no animosity. We're all on the same page. We know exactly what we're getting. Instead of, if you're a multi-op out there and you're providing gear for someone, you may not think this is as important to you because this is a gear rental. So you'll send, your B quality stuff and not the A stuff. So this avoids all of that. Again, encouraging all of the gear providers to put pictures in your quote. And I'll tell you, I actually send those pictures to my clients for their approval. If that gear doesn't look like what I sent them to approve, trust me, they're savvy enough to call it out. And I don't want to deal with a pissed off client because the gear isn't looking to the level of what the pictures were presented. Gear is becoming as much a part of the design as the florals, as the chairs and other pieces. So it has to be an accurate representation. I've got a few more tips for you. We're going to pause for just a second so you can hear a word about one of our sponsors. Hey, private event DJs, are you still planning your clients' events with a Google Doc or a Spotify playlist? If so, let me help you out. Vibo is a music and event planning app for your clients that I've been using for years. Not only has it been a great perk in booking my services, but it's the only tool that has ever been mentioned in client reviews. Vibo saves you time. It syncs your music from your client's requests in seconds, and it integrates with your music software of choice. Now here's an exclusive offer for my podcast listeners. Save $10 off your first month subscription by entering the promo code DJBrianB when booking your free demo on Vibo's website. This one small change will level up your business. Visit ViboDJ.com, enter the promo code DJBrianB, and book your free demo today. All right, tip number 3 here. Now this one's going to vary from person to person, meaning from DJ to DJ. So I'm going to give you my preference, and that is I love to have the gear provider deliver, set up, stay for the event, typically as a lighting tech, and then tear down. Even if they aren't needed from a lighting tech standpoint, I want them there the entire time in case there's a problem. Even if it's gear I know, if they have set it up, there could be situations where I don't know exactly how a certain cable's run and we need to change it. Maybe the power outlet is having issues and we need to reroute it to some other outlet. And when you haven't set it up, you have enough on your plate trying to control the rest of the entertainment to have to deal with that. Now, if you have an assistant, that might help. But again, the cost of having a tech there is so worth it when you compare what it could cost you should something go sideways. Now, we're going to talk pricing here momentarily, but I do want to talk a little bit about the setup and teardown. Now, when I ask for the delivery, setup, and teardown to be included in the quote, that means that technically when the event is over, I can unplug and leave. Now, that's not me trying to be a prima donna. My routine typically starts super early in the morning. So if it's a super late evening event, they don't know all the things that I have going on once this event's over. I may have a super early flight the next morning. I may need to use that quote unquote teardown time to be with the client or to talk with the vendors. And I'm not going to say it necessarily has happened with me, but I've heard that a lot of gear providers can get salty when the talent doesn't tear down. Now, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal here, but I do try to help with the teardown if I can, even if I paid someone else to do it. That might be just breaking down a few things, or it may be me offering to be an extra gear hand to save some costs. But a gear provider should never make the talent feel guilty after the event when they don't tear down, especially if they've paid for the teardown service. All right, I've got 2 more tips, and we'll get to those after another word about one of our sponsors. True confession time. In 2010, I had grown my performance team to 13 DJs, and we were about to hit 7 figures in revenue for the first time. In a small town, no less. 15 months later, we were down to 3 of those 13 DJs, and I was blaming everything and everyone. It took years for me to realize that it was my leadership, company culture, and ultimately me that were the problems. If only Brock Barton Lifestyle Leadership Coaching had been around. Lucky for you, it is available now, and to me, this is a game changer for our industry. After everything we have all experienced in the last few years, health and wellness has never been more important. And Brock Barton Lifestyle Leadership Coaching is tailor-made for our industry. Go to brockbarton.com, and for my podcast listeners, mention Brian B for a free 1-hour coaching session. You have to first lead yourself before you can lead others. This is a can't-miss opportunity. All right, our next tip. This is kind of a pet peeve, I think, on multiple levels, not just for the DJ, but for those a part of the event, especially if this is a high dollar event. Some of the providers might not have worked a wedding of this caliber, and so they see this as an opportunity to market their services for clients of this caliber, and I'll give them a pass here. Maybe they're just not aware of posting etiquette on social media when it comes to you being a gear provider. Much like a linen company doesn't get credited for the actual linens, typically it's usually the designer who gets credited with bringing those things to the table, no pun intended. The same thing could be said for DJs or entertainers. Typically the production company isn't noted in any of the official event tagging. This isn't a knock, it's just that the tags would be ridiculously long if we notated every single provider. You're kind of riding under the DJ's umbrella, if you will. So what I have seen more times than I care to admit from people that I would think would know that this isn't proper, and that is that they tag the DJ, they tag the planner, they'll even tag the couple and the venue. Even if it's just saying that they're providing gear, this can backfire quick. I've had folks that have shadowed me, they're not even providing gear, but they'll tag the planner and the venue and myself in a social media post, and I've had the planner literally get with me and go, who is this person that's tagging everybody? It's not a good look and a terrible reflection on the actual entertainer. And I think I've said this on a previous podcast that it makes you come across as thirsty, which is different than being hungry. Thirsty means that you're going to do whatever you can to try to punch up, even if it's kind of shady. So my suggestion is to ask the DJ, what's the protocol here? Am I allowed to post? Who can I tag? Is it okay if I tag you? Is it okay if I mention that I provided gear, or do I need to keep this discreet? Because there's other things at play here. The couple may have had the DJ sign an NDA, or maybe they've requested that nothing gets posted. One of the events I did was this very unique wedding location, and the planner wanted to be the first to push things out there. They had a film crew come in and show it off. And here, even though the reach may not have been as big as, let's say, myself or someone else affiliated with the event, it still blows the surprise when somebody who's just, again, not even a gear provider, but a shadow starts posting things. And do you think you're going to get any business from those particular people you're tagging if they see that you're kind of thirsty like this? I also think this goes beyond just the posting. It could be literally you standing next to the DJ for the duration of an event. Might not be a good look, especially if the DJ hasn't sold an assistant, or maybe you're not dressed to the level of what's required for an assistant. Ultimately, it does the exact opposite of what you probably want it to do, which instead of having the DJ or the planner say, hey, I have to have this person every time I do an event here, it could come across as this person has never worked an event of this caliber. And it may come down to the point where the planner actually says to the DJ, don't ever use that person again, which sucks for everyone. We all lose. So I don't mean to bring down this podcast, but I want to have some real talk here. All right, we'll get to my final tip and or take, however you want to describe it. And it's an important one, after one more word about one of our sponsors. Hey DJs, real quick, Brian B here with a tip. One of the hottest DJ music pools right now is Heavy Hits. Are you familiar with it? You need to be. They cover literally every genre, from top 40 to hip hop to Latin to Afro beats and more. Not only that, but their curated playlists and charts, including trending Spotify and TikTok tracks, are second to none. The interface is easy to use, and they have a ton of exclusive edits, which I use on the regular. But you want to know the best part? For my podcast listeners, I have a special promo code that will give you a 30-day trial for $5. Yep, you heard that right, $5. Go to heavyhits.com and enter the promo code BrianB. That's heavyhits.com, and the promo code code is BrianB, all one word, no spaces. Take advantage of this right now and up your music game today. All right, our final tip, and probably the one you've been waiting for: what to charge. Let me start by saying that I never want to take advantage of the gear provider. Most travel DJs would be on the same page with that. To put it bluntly, they are charging enough with their talent fee that they don't need to mark up the gear or any other area to turn a profit. Now, like I said, majority of travel DJs think this way. That's not everyone though. There are exceptions. There are some travel DJs that maybe don't do this regularly, but those are few and far between and definitely are not the professionals in the room. I'm never going to ask a gear provider to do something for a deal. That said, I do know what I can rent gear for from a production house. I've had some folks try to pull one over on me and say to others, well, it's Brian B. He's working with so-and-so planner, probably making a mint. I'm going to charge higher than I would if it was somebody else. And because I know what is out there, I can sniff that out pretty quickly. Now, I do realize that geography plays a part in this. If I'm renting somewhere in, let's just say, Alabama somewhere, not too sure why I threw out that one, as opposed to New York City, it's going to be different. You've got tolls you got to cover, you've got parking costs to cover, whereas in Alabama, you might not have those things. Same with places like San Francisco, even the rural parts. It may be that I have to truck this in from 3 or 4 hours away to get the gear I need, so there's going to be an additional cost. I've actually had gear providers tell me that they talk to one another, so they know what one another's charging, which I think is a little bit shady, to be quite honest with you, because they don't know all the particulars. These are one-offs, right? And so especially those that are in those markets where the pricing should be less in general, and they hear what someone's paying for a New York City market rental, they see green dollar signs and they just jack up the price to what that other market is charging because they think, why shouldn't I be making that kind of money too? Now, I can't speak for other DJs out there, but the way I price my services is that the bulk of my money, meaning my profit, is made on the talent side. The gear, and this is a change from years previous, I don't even charge for. I literally take the quote from the gear provider now and give it to the client and have them sign with the provider directly. Now, if it's an extreme situation or the client is adamant about running it through my company, I will, but that's only if they are really pushing for that. So what does that mean? It means I'm not trying to mark up the production at all. I can only speak for myself, but I never try to shake down the gear provider. There are times when the budget is X, and this is rare because I try to get the quote from the gear provider first before presenting to a client. But if for whatever reason it has to go the other direction and I've quoted them, then I have to say to the gear provider, hey, this is the budget that I've been given to work with. Can you do it for this amount? And it's on you as the gear provider to say yay or nay. You know, it may be worth it for you to work with the DJ at a reduced rate than what you'd want to get because maybe you're able to shadow them, or it could lead to other repeat business if it all goes well. What I loathe though are those conversations where I'm trying to figure out what's this going to cost, and the gear provider asks right back, well, what's your budget? And it's a who's going to flinch first kind of move. I hate that. Let me know what it's going to cost, and then let me take it back to the client to get it approved. If I think it's reasonable, I'm going to fight for you and fight for you to get the rate that you deserve. I'm not going to let them try to shake you down either. I'm on your side. We're both partners in this. It's a weird place to be because I'm also a partner of the clients and I want them to get the best value. That's why I've called you in the first place. But if you're listening to this, maybe it's the first time you've ever done a gear rental, or maybe you're going to be approached by this and you've never done it before. Let's talk real numbers. For you, it may be giving up one of your people or yourself on a date where you could be working in an event. And hey, I'm not trying to take money out of your pocket for my rental, but I do think you have to consider that the work that you would put into a normal wedding, I would hope wouldn't be the same work you're putting into a gear rental. So it's kind of a trade-off. Yes, there's day of service, but all of the stuff that you would be doing to prepare for the wedding, which probably would be many hours worth that you would be charging a wedding client for if you were DJing it, shouldn't apply here. I also realize that being a gear provider probably isn't your primary business focus. I'm just giving you some thoughts about how to decide on a rate for yourself. The average cost for most gear is somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500. And what that would typically include would be a ceremony setup, a cocktail hour setup, and a reception setup. Sometimes that cocktail hour setup might be swapped out for a dinner setup. That's audio for between 150 to 200 people, a technician, and some production lighting, whether that's a Stereotubes, moving heads, and of course comes with setup and teardown. Now, Anything else might be a couple $100 more, like CO2 or cold sparks. So I'm not counting those things in there. But in general, it usually falls between those amounts. So use that as kind of a barometer for yourself. I like to say this when I'm quoting DJ services. I say this when I'm quoting DJ jobs for myself with my clients. I'll say, I'm going to charge you the amount that I feel allows me to produce the best work possible. No more, no less. And I would say the same should apply for rentals. One last thing I'll say is I might charge a fee to the client for gear procurement, but this is if I don't know who the providers are out there and it's going to take me significant time to research. So I do want to be transparent and letting you know that that cost is in there at times. Very, very rare. If it takes me one Facebook post to find out who's available in a certain market and I don't have to dig too far into it, then no, I'm not going to charge for that. But if I'm having to spend significant time on securing a gear provider, then yes, I definitely need to charge for that. And that's separate from my talent fee. As far as a DJ, this is kind of research that the client isn't having to do themselves. So I hope this is helpful. This wasn't meant as a hate type of podcast episode, but more to help us come together because there's more DJs traveling than ever before. And there's a lot of opportunity for DJ companies to learn from those DJs and be a help because you don't know when you might need that reciprocated. Super last thing. One of the things I've always appreciated about the gear providers that I have procured in the past, a lot of them will take content for me. They'll bring a 360 cam. They'll, of course, ask me if it's okay that they take content from me or if I would like them to, and they'll offer it with no extra fee. That is like gold. I don't want to speak for the others, but for me, I'm loyal to the ones that treat me right and that do it right, and I refer them all the time to other DJs who are coming to those markets because I want them to be set up for success. I don't feel threatened that they're using my gear person or whatever. Again, there's going to come a time when I'm going to need them to recommend somebody, and I want them to send me their best. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. You can find this podcast on multiple platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you have a topic you'd like covered, DM us on Instagram at The Travel DJ Blend. We'd appreciate you sharing the love with a comment or a share on our social media posts for this episode. And if you are really digging the content, help us with the algorithms by leaving a review on any of the platforms we just mentioned. Until our next time together, this is the Travel DJ Blend Podcast.